of lives. Arbenz, the Democrat now branded a communist, was humiliated, stripped naked, and photographed before being forced into exile. Richard Nixon, then Vice President of the United States, flew in to congratulate the new dictators.
That Guatemala is going to enter a new era in which there will be prosperity for the people, together with liberty for the people.
General Rios Montt was to be one of Washington's faces of liberty. During his time as president in the 1980s, thousands of people were murdered by death squads, most of them indigenous men, women and children. His guns and helicopters came from the United States. President Reagan flew in to warmly endorse the general, whom he described as a man of great personal integrity.
In the CIA, we didn't give a hoot about democracy. I mean, it was fine if a government was elected and would cooperate with us, but if it didn't, then democracy didn't mean a thing to us. And I don't think it means a thing today.
The crushing of Guatemala was Washington's blueprint. 4 years later, Cuba, just 90 miles from Florida, threw down the first direct challenge, ending Cuba's humiliation as a North American colony, a playpen for drug barons and the mafia.
Se han encontrado con que la revolución cubana sabe también pelear y ganar batallas en este campo.
Washington would never forgive Fidel Castro.
Under the government aegis, we had task forces that were striking at Cuba constantly. We were attempting to blow up power plants. We were attempting to ruin sugar mills. We were attempting to do all kinds of things during this period. This was a matter of American government policy. This wasn't the CIA.
Cuba's achievements in healthcare and education are widely respected. However, for not bowing to the greatest power on earth, the Cuban Revolution has paid a high price. A 45-year economic war waged by the United States and the loss of vital democratic freedoms.
How dare you, 90 miles from my country, last 45 years with a different form of government? How dare you haven't allowed American corporations to buy you out? How dare you continue this arrogance that says that you will never succumb to us? Don't you know who we are? Don't you know who these corporations are? Don't you know your life would be better if you could drink Coca-Cola every day?
What justified the attacks on Cuba and other Latin American countries was the so-called Red Menace.
We all know the atomic bomb is very dangerous. Since it may be used against us, we must get ready for it. First, you duck, and then you cover. And very tightly, you cover the back of your neck and your face.
Propaganda like this excused every American invasion, every toppling of a government, every assassination, every act of terrorism. The real threat was an orchestrated paranoia in the United States that became a super cult called anti-communism.
The true goal of the United States government is control. And they feel that if the United States did not control the governments of Latin America, then somebody else would. And the principle of government by the people, for the people, of the people, that is that's just silly.
This is Santiago, the capital of Chile. In 1973, the National Stadium was turned into a concentration camp as a military coup backed by the United States overthrew the democratically elected government of Salvador Allende. The leader of the coup was a fascist, General Augusto Pinochet. who rounded up Allende's supporters and brought them here. A young medical student, Roberto Navarrete, was one of them. These changing rooms were used as what when you were imprisoned here?
They were used as places where people were kept inside here, 50 or more. You can see that there was actually no room to move around here. Even all these places were full of people sleeping here, and there were no blankets or anything. Even some people actually slept here. There was very little room.
When they started to torture you all,
Yeah.
what did they do to you then?
The techniques they used were beating you, especially in sort of places where it could become very painful, with a rubber truncheon, and especially the genitals and the soles of the feet, and the arms and various places.
Over 2,000 people were confined here, many of them never to be seen again. Victor Jara was Chile's greatest balladeer. His songs had celebrated the popular democracy of the government of Salvador Allende. He was taken to the stadium, where he was a source of strength for his fellow prisoners, singing for them until soldiers beat him to the ground and smashed his hands. In his last poem, smuggled out of the stadium, he wrote, "What horror the face of fascism creates! They carry out their plans with knife-like precision. For them, blood equals medals. How hard it is to sing when I must sing of horror, in which silence and screams are the end of my song." After 2 days, they killed him. How old were you?
I was 18.
18.
Yeah.
Does the fear that you experienced then, is that something that imprints itself on the rest of your life?
Yes, but we felt it was part of what we were trying to build in this country.
What they were trying to build was a just, equitable democracy that took control of Chile's economy from the United States and its proxies. For the invisible people of Latin America, Chile under Allende became an inspiration. In Washington, President Nixon secretly plotted to destroy the Chilean economy. "We're going to make the economy scream," said Nixon. In Santiago, General Pinochet, America's man, sent in his British-made bombers against the presidential palace. It was September the 11th, 1973, a date that held an infamy and irony 28 years later.
My wife and our children were at the house, and they had a marvelous view of these planes winging over and then dipping down and sending their bombs into the Moneda.
From inside the palace, Allende refused to leave, true to his promise not to surrender the government for which the ordinary people of Chile had voted. He broadcast this last message, then he shot himself.
Trabajadores de mi patria, tengo fe en Chile y su destino. Llegan ustedes sabiendo que mucho más temprano que tarde, de nuevo, abrirán las grandes alamedas por donde pase el hombre libre para construir una sociedad mejor. ¡Viva Chile! ¡Viva el pueblo! ¡Vivan los trabajadores!
With General Pinochet in power, Washington again denied it had destroyed another democracy.
We had no contact with any of the people that carried out the military coup, and therefore the coup that overthrew Allende was done without contact with the United States.
A very different story is told by these secret documents. In October 1970, the CIA cabled its man in Chile. It is firm and continuing policy that Allende be overthrown by a coup. When that happened 3 years later, a US official cabled back to Washington. Chile's coup d'etat was close to perfect.
Fascism is a word that's often misused, but you've experienced it, the real thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think
When did you realize that you were ensnarled by fascism? When did it manifest itself?
I think it was evident from the very beginning. The ferocity, the sheer brute force that they use, the disregard for any kind of human dignity. I mean, their aim was really to make you into a thing. I think in order to protect themselves, because if they made you into a thing, then they didn't have to have human feelings towards you. They dehumanized you from the very beginning.
Once again, a Latin American elite was delighted to be rescued by fascism.
A country has to be well set, has to be well run, well worked, and see that everyone does the work. Because if they don't, then that country goes to the dogs. And this is the one man that's been able to hold them. I don't believe there's any torturing done in this country. Because you understand one thing. Why torture somebody when you can shoot them?
This is where they tortured and killed them. Villa Grimaldi was once a palatial home in a suburb of Santiago. Under Pinochet, it became a place of horror. Today, it's a memorial to its many victims. Sarah DeWitt, then a student activist, was a survivor.
What was the date that you were arrested? Do you remember?
Oh, yes. I was picked up on the 3rd of April, 1975, 7 o'clock, on the dot.
So the junta had been in power for about 18 months.
Yes. So when I realized, someone had put what I imagine it was a gun, in my back and said to me, don't make any noise, don't try to run because we will shoot you. You are coming with us.
In a strange wooden tower like this, in spaces the size of a dog's kennel, people were tortured to death.
They took me to this room. They were punching me, hitting me, grabbing my nipples, telling me that I was a whore. So they asked me to take off my clothes, and they tied me up, and then they started giving me electricity. Now the electricity was all the time inside my vagina, in my breast, and then it was going round, round my body, my legs, my arms. And well, they did that, they would stop asking me questions, and then touching me everywhere, and shouting, abusing, and then they continue with electricity.
Dwayne Claridge was head of the CIA's Latin American division in the early 1980s.
Chile, the only reason it exists is because of Pinochet.
At a huge human price.
What human price? Give me a break.
The thousands who were disappeared and murdered?
Thousands? You count them. What thousands?
Well,
and
I've
don't
seen...
talk to me about truth commissions.
I've seen their names in the cemetery in Santiago.
Yeah,
you're saying they're
thousands.
fakes?
They aren't thousands.
Well...
There aren't thousands, sir.
There are thousands, each name documented by human rights organizations, some of them remembered here on the memorial wall at Villa Grimaldi.
You have a couple of friends there, like Jacqueline.
Yes, I have friends, mainly people from my training. There is a girl there, Jacqueline Drugy, another one, Cecilia Labrin. She was pregnant, Cecilia, 3 months pregnant when they took her. They took another woman, Elizabeth Recas. She was 7 months pregnant. She went missing as well.
Doesn't bear thinking about, does it?
No, because sometimes, I think about what were they feeling, when they were being killed, and why, and well, sometimes I think too much, and I start feeling, like the pain. What do you feel when you are being killed, and in such a way that I find frightening, really.
Yeah.
Because you wish, that you could have done something for them. Such the isolation, you must feel totally, I don't know, what do you think, really?
Alone.
Yeah, very, very much alone.
It was a period in which almost everybody in the present situation regards as a dark time, in which the CIA played a major role.
That's right. They played a major role in overthrowing, what's his name?
What's his name was Salvador Allende.
Yeah, fine. Okay.
He was democratically elected.
Right. Okay.
Is that okay to overthrow a democratically elected government? Is it okay?
It depends on what your national security interests are.
Are you denying that Pinochet caused huge suffering in that country?
I don't buy. That he committed crimes, I agree.
But it's worth it.
Huh?
Is that what you're saying? Those crimes are worth it?
Yeah. Sometimes, unfortunately, things have to be changed in a rather ugly way.
Levántate y mira la montaña, de donde viene el viento, el sol y el agua. Tú que manejas el curso de los ríos.
By the late 70s, most of Latin America was controlled by dictators, including those like Pinochet, who were openly fascist. All of them were backed, directly and indirectly, by the United States. They sent their henchmen to be trained here at the School of the Americas in Georgia. Officially, it was described as little more than a Boy Scout camp, teaching American values such as respect for human rights. In fact, from these manuals were taught interrogation and torture techniques. Major Joseph Blair taught at the School of the Americas in the early 1980s.
The doctrine that was taught was that if you want information, you use physical abuse, you use false imprisonment, you use threats to family members, you use virtually any method necessary to get what you want.
Torture?
And killing.
Kill them?
Killing. If there's someone you don't want, you kill them. If you can't get the information you want, if you can't get that person to shut up or stop what they're doing, you simply assassinate them, and you assassinate them with one of your death squads.
This is a death squad in action in El Salvador. Actually, it's the National Police, many of whom were trained at the School of the Americas. Here on the steps of San Salvador Cathedral, they're gunning down mourners attending the funeral of Archbishop Romero, who was murdered as he said Mass on March the 23rd, 1980. This man, Robert d'Aubusson, gave the order to kill the Archbishop. Major d'Aubusson was Washington's dirty secret in El Salvador. He was trained at the School of the Americas. According to the Truth Commission and a whole swathe of human...
Come on, John. This is where we're going. You're wasting my time. That's all bullshit. Those people all had agendas.
So it was bullshit that the Salvadorian military were murdering tens of thousands of people.
I bet you can't count more than 200 in the whole 10 or 12 years.
We can count 200 in this one village alone. They were mostly women and children, systematically murdered in just one day and night in December 1981 in the village of El Mazote. The killers belonged to a special battalion of the El Salvador Army trained by the United States. There were few survivors.
Vio que las mujeres se abrazaban llorando y gritando que no las mataran. Yo, por estar peleando por mis hijos, no los quería dar, no los quería dejar yo, decía que me moriría con ellos, pero me los quitaron de mis brazos. Cuando se oía que estaban matando a los niños por la noche, se oían los gritos de los niños y les gritaban a sus mamás y a sus papás.
You're taking the stuff from these propaganda mills. And I'm not interested.
What are the propaganda mills?
All these things, this truth thing and all that. They're nothing but propaganda mills.
Do you really think
I didn't know so.
Are they all conning us, lying us? Yeah, Amnesty International?
Amnesty International is right in the middle of it.
During the 1980s, the years of Ronald Reagan in the White House, a trail of carnage and grief was blazed across Central America. I reported America's war against Nicaragua, which had the temerity to overthrow a Washington-backed dictator, Somoza. The CIA attacked Nicaragua with death squads known as the Contra. Why did Washington attack such tiny countries? Because the weaker they are, the greater the threat. People who can free themselves against all the odds are sure to inspire others. What right have you, when I mean you, the CIA, the United States government, or any foreign power, what right do you have to do what you do in other countries? What
National
right?
security interests.
But that's a divine right, isn't it? Because the people that you do it to have no say in this.
Yeah, well, that's just tough. We are going to protect ourselves, and we're going to go on protecting ourselves because we end up protecting all of you. And let's not forget that.
Right. Right? No, I won't.
We'll intervene whenever we decide it's in our national security interest to intervene. And if you don't like it, lump it. Get used to it, world. We're not going to put up with nonsense. And if our interests are threatened, we're going to do it.
In Guatemala, the United Nations described the Washington-backed campaign against the Mayan people as genocide. An American Roman Catholic nun, Sister Diana Ortiz, experienced this at first hand as a missionary. In 1989, after speaking out about the brutal treatment of the indigenous people, she was kidnapped.
In 1989, November 2nd, I was abducted and I was put in a police car, blindfolded and taken to a military installation in Guatemala City, known as the Polytechnica, which still exists today. I was taken to a basement, and I still remember to this day, upon entering the building, the clandestine prison, hearing the screams of people being tortured. Can we stop?
For 24 hours, she was tortured and gang raped. During her ordeal, she identified the leader of the gang as a fellow citizen of the United States.
I came out a totally different person, but also with new eyes and more attuned to the hurting, the brokenness, the oppression, the deceit of my government. I've heard people say that what happened in Abu Ghraib is an isolated incident. And I have to just shake my head and say, you know, are we on the same planet? You know, aren't you aware of our history? You know, isn't history taught in the classroom about, you know, the role of the US government in human rights violations?
By the late 1980s, Washington's policy changed. Dictators like Pinochet were seen as an unnecessary embarrassment. A new and innovative way of controlling nations was launched.
Good morning and welcome. It's good to have you all here to help celebrate the launching of a program with a vision and a noble purpose. The National Endowment for Democracy is, just as we've been told, more than bipartisan. The establishment of the National Endowment goes right to the heart of America's faith in democratic ideals and institutions. It offers hope to people everywhere.
Like any new brand, it had a snappy name: democracy. It was largely fake, an illusion of marketing and spin. This brand of democracy meant that whoever you voted for, the policies would be broadly the same, and your country's economy would be in step with the United States. Washington would be your closest friend, or else. In the 1990s, these democracies in name replaced dictatorships in Latin America, with Chile providing the model. This is the commercial center of Santiago, Chile. On the surface today, everything seems normal, modern, prosperous. To the Bush administration, Chile is the very model of economic success. A laboratory experiment, according to the magazine Business Week. Much of life has been privatized. There are now billionaires, and the rich are getting richer.
Pinochet fixed the country.
Who says? The United States says.
No. The World Bank says, the Inter-American Bank says, everybody says it. He brought about an economic miracle in Chile. And I'm not saying he had the brains for it, but he had the brains to hire all these people, Chileans, who had studied at the University of Chicago, who knew something about real economics.
Real economics were advocated by Milton Friedman, an extreme right-wing economist at the University of Chicago. Friedman was invited to perform his laboratory experiment on the economic life of Chile. The families of the tortured and disappeared were silent witnesses. Without irony, he called his experiment shock treatment.
Please be seated. Well, thank you all very much. It's an honor for me to be here to pay tribute to a hero of freedom, Milton Friedman. He has used a brilliant mind to advance a moral vision. We have seen Milton Friedman's ideas at work in Chile, where a group of economists called the Chicago Boys brought inflation under control and laid the groundwork for economic success.
This is the other side of the economic miracle. Chile today is a deeply unequal society. This shanty town is just minutes from Santiago's smart hotels.
Hay tantos cesantes, hay miles de cesantes, los jóvenes, y el que trabaja no alcanza para nada. ¿Y con qué paga la luz? ¿Con qué paga el agua? Hay que comprar el gas, todas las cosas que hay que comprar. Diariamente la mamá dice, ¿qué hago para la comida de los niños? ¿De dónde saco dinero?
We found this couple living and freezing in the shantytown. They're homeless and have a week-old baby.
Si usted puede describir un poco cómo es vivir en estas condiciones.
Para empezar, el frío en la noche.
Difícil.
El frío en la noche es súper difícil. Por mi guagua tuvimos que prender la cocina.
¿Cuánta gente en Chile vive de esta manera?
En realidad,
yo creo que mucha gente.
Y en peores condiciones que nosotros. Pero hay gente que no simplemente no recibe ayuda porque no nomás, porque no hay ayuda.
¿A dónde se van a ir entonces?
A la calle. Vamos a dormir en la calle otra vez. Pues,
ya hemos dormido en la calle.
En el extranjero, en Europa y en Estados Unidos y en otros lugares se dice que Chile tiene una reputación como un país rico, acomodado.
Sí.
¿Qué es lo que ustedes dicen a eso?
Sí, yo creo que
puede
sí.
ser, es verdad, pero
es
para
verdad,
la gente
pero
que...
eso es para la gente que tiene, no para nosotros.
Chile is a democracy now, in theory. A complicated voting system splits the vote and discourages real reform. It's a product of General Pinochet, based on a constitution that's also a product of Pinochet. The general may be dead, but the power of the military remains. It's all very modern, the media is safe, and many believe it's wise to be silent, like the graves of their forgotten compatriots. It's Washington's ideal democracy.
La dictadura tuvo un gran éxito en Chile desde el punto de vista de que estableció un modelo político, económico y social que todavía permanece hasta el día de hoy, porque en esencia no se ha cambiado la constitución que impuso la dictadura en 1980.
No, nosotros no perseguimos democracia porque esa palabra está tan manoseada que no se entiende. Aquí hay una persecución contra los pobres, y no es en Chile, en toda América Latina está pasando eso. Yo creo que la gente que estudia sabe que ese punto de seguir así va a reventar en alguna cosa eso. Yo pienso que el pueblo va a despertar y va a decir, basta, ¿hasta cuándo?
This is Bolivia, another laboratory experiment. The majority of the population of this spectacular, brutalized country high in the Andes have also been invisible until recently. The indigenous people, the Aymara and Quechua, carry memories of a culture and civilization and wealth long before the Spanish arrived 500 years ago. They remember how a single hill of silver underwrote the entire Spanish Empire, while they became the poorest. This is the National Congress of Bolivia. Until recently, the faces here were almost all white, the descendants of a tiny Spanish elite which plundered the nation's riches and reduced the indigenous majority to serfdom. It was a pattern of control repeated all over Latin America. The pattern has been broken in Bolivia with the rise of social justice movements of a kind never seen before, and whose democratic home is not Westminster or Washington or any other so-called model, but in the streets, the mines, the barrios, the fields. Governments that defy this popular power, this true democracy, do so at their own peril. This is El Alto, the highest city on earth, and perhaps the poorest. The occupants of this cemetery on the roof of the world are mainly children. Protected, they say, by the sacred mountain Illimani, El Alto overlooks Bolivia's capital, La Paz. Juan Delfin, a priest and a taxi driver, has lived here for most of his life.
Esta es una zona Villa Ingenio, cementerio general de Villa Ingenio, de la zona norte, de la ciudad del Alto. Y aquí hay una triste amargura. Hay de todo tipo que están nuestros hermanos, nuestros niños, nuestras hijas, nuestros abuelos y abuelas muertos que están simplemente enterrados. Vemos lo que está, ¿no? Hay incluso una familia, se envenenó toda la familia por falta de trabajo, por falta de economía. Primero el esposo lo envenenó a su esposa, a sus hijos, y él también se envenenó. Hay casos que hemos visto así.
When I first came to Bolivia in the 1960s, El Alto barely existed. The million people living here are peasants run off their land and miners made redundant by policies similar to those imposed in Chile. Infrastructure that didn't make a quick buck was privatized. The message was clear: sell it, strip it, or scrap it. The indigenous people were scrapped.
¿Por qué? Nos preguntamos. Si yo era rico, si soy boliviano rico y nacido, pero ¿por qué estoy pidiendo la limosna? ¿Por qué? Si teníamos mar por un lado, ¿no? Si teníamos plata, oro, todo teníamos. Entonces, ¿por qué seguimos sufriendo?
And yet the people here have held together. Their sense of identity, their community. In the year 2000, the people of Bolivia's second city, Cochabamba, fought an epic struggle to win back their most basic resource, water, from a foreign consortium dominated by the American corporation Bechtel. And they won. Three years later, in 2003, Bolivia's power brokers were about to get another shock. This is Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozada. Known as Goni, he was brought up in Washington. His English is better than his Spanish. They knew him here as El Gringo.
Yo lo veía un gordo sentado en una silla de ruedas, que es de oro, ¿no? Y soberbio. Entonces yo pienso que él era soberbio, tal vez por el poder que tenía, ¿no? Que era su riqueza.
When Goni was elected president of Bolivia in 2003, he backed a law that amounted to a fire sale of the country's resources. Almost everything was up for grabs, including Latin America's second biggest gas reserves.
De un de repente sabemos que tenemos gas y se está vendiendo al otro extranjero y tiene que ir a Estados Unidos, tan grandes, y mientras yo me estoy cocinando con leña. Entonces empieza la guerra desde ahí. Y bloqueamos, manifestamos y paro hasta que nos responda.
The people of El Alto fought back, blocking the roads leading into La Paz.
Se bloquee, que no se deje, que no vuele una mosca, decían. la gente ya salía a bloquear y no dejamos pasar las movilidades, ¿no? Pero eso se ha ido ya, ¿cómo se dice? Intensificando.
Gurney's response was the traditional Latin American way. He sent in the army to crush dissent. Scores were shot dead. Many were brought to Juan Delfin's church.
Las mesas han hecho así, y estaba aquí las mesas, y estaba aquí los cadáveres estaban aquí, entonces, y aquí es lo que incluso a los muertos hasta con clavos le sacaron las balas le sacaron, le tiraron a otro lado, y era triste el ver aquí todo este miseria. Todo eso era lleno aquí, puros doctores, estaba aquí, ninguna gente, pero el olor era harto. Y como quedaron huérfanos los aguas, lloraban ahí, gritaban ahí, papá, papá, papá.
Tens of thousands of people poured down into La Paz, like the people of Venezuela's barrios demanding the return of their president. They demanded their country back. If the rich and powerful of Latin America had a nightmare, this was it.
De pronto se sabía que el Gón iba a renunciar. Peor con eso. Hemos agarrado como si fuera algo, un ánimo para que él se vaya. La meta era eso, para sacarlo a él. Eso era la meta.
Gurney fled to the United States and is today living in a smart suburb of Washington. In October 2004, the Bolivian Congress ordered his arrest on charges of bloody massacre. George Bush has said, governments that harbour terrorists are as guilty as they are.
Pero toda esta oscuridad estamos así. El oscuro que nos ve. Toda la oscuridad.
This extraordinary mural was painted by Juan Delfin. It's a cry of freedom from an entire continent.
Todo mataron, pero nosotros defendemos este pueblo aymara con el potuto que defendemos nosotros, con la expresión de la voz, con el puño que tenemos y que manejamos nuestra bandera, que es nuestra huipala, la bandera, contra Estados Unidos. Este es Estados Unidos, la bandera de Estados Unidos. Contra eso estamos nosotros, porque ellos nos han hecho esto así. Es puño muy importante. Por eso cuando juramos, sí, esto es nuestro, y estamos así.
In 2005, the people of Bolivia took an historic step. For the first time ever, an indigenous person was voted president in a landslide. Like Chavez in Venezuela, Evo Morales offered a new democracy and a new beginning.
Quisiéramos que todos empecemos a trabajar. Se acabó las fiestas, se acabó la luna de miel, ahora es trabajo permanente para cambiar nuestra Bolivia.
Sin duda que está creciendo, se está propagando por todo el continente de América Latina, el Caribe, pero sobre todo en Sudamérica. Yo me la paso recorriendo esta América Latina desde Buenos Aires hasta Brasilia, Montevideo, La Paz, y por todos lados hay un fervor desatado, hay un fervor.
In Latin America, there's now a host of leaders offering new beginnings. Of course, history is crowded with heroes who offer new beginnings. The respectability of great power and its games and deals and plunder always beckon. If these new leaders succumb, their biggest threat may not be from Washington, but from the people on the hillsides.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
El futuro es para mis hijos, para nuestros jóvenes. Y esa lucha no es solamente de Chávez, esa lucha es nuestra. Eso que Chávez abrió, que reconoció nuestras luchas, que nosotros estamos dando con él, lo vamos a seguir dando. O sea, la lucha del imperio no es con Chávez, es con nosotros.
Llegó la hora del gran despertar. Y creo que Víctor Hugo, terminemos por ahí, yo soy muy victorugiano. Víctor Hugo escribió aquello: no hay nada tan poderoso como la idea cuya época ha llegado. El imperio americano llegó a su fin y debe imponerse en el mundo, bueno, el imperio de la ley, de la igualdad, de la justicia, de la fraternidad. Muchas gracias, John.
Perfecto.
I want
Muchas
to
gracias.
see you again.
What happened here at the National Stadium in Santiago, Chile, has a special place in the struggle for freedom and democracy throughout Latin America and the world. The vow is never again, and yet it has happened again at Guantanamo Bay and all the other secret places where imperial power, regardless of its democratic pretensions, hides and tortures its perceived enemies. The questions raised in this film are urgent. Are the lives and dreams of the ordinary people of Chile, like the people of Venezuela, like the people of Bolivia, like the people of Nicaragua, like the people of Vietnam and Iraq and Iran and Palestine, expendable, worth only a few seconds on the news if they're lucky? The answer is no, and those who see the world through the eyes of the powerful should be warned. People are rising from the tyranny and oblivion to which we in the West have consigned them. Indeed, their resistance is well underway, as this film has shown. I would say it never stopped and is unbeatable.
I go to the movie and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to my brother and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Lord, there've been times that I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long a long time coming, but I know change gonna